Businesses are facing the greatest challenges to their very existence in almost a century. We are tracking the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic through the eyes of 11 small to medium-sized British businesses spanning multiple sectors. By asking owners and senior directors some of the tough decisions they are making, but also their optimisms, we're hoping that we can play our small part in this crisis to create a sense of unity and togetherness. I'm John Passmore and I'm a consultant and director at 2SB Management Systems. This was a week where I think we were all hoping to see the death rate stabilise and even start to fall. Sadly, it remains around 750 and has crept up to 850 deaths in the latter part of the week. We had another 3 weeks of lockdown announced this week, and the furlough scheme was extended until the end of June by the Chancellor in order to give greater confidence to businesses. Another change in the furlough scheme is that the qualifying date has been moved to March the 19th to catch another 200,000 new employees who had previously not been able to access the furlough scheme due to changing jobs in February. Boris Johnson still isn't in the front line of political service, and this is one of the reasons the UK has been slow to announce any sort of strategy about how we're going to exit the lockdown. The FTSE 100 and S&P 500 were largely stable this week, with a small drop of 1% for the FTSE 100 and a rise of 2% for the S&P 500 in the States. The Office of Budget Responsibility said the UK is going to see a drop of around 35% in GDP since the start of this year, and this was backed up by a couple of prominent figures. We're going to have to see if this plays out in reality. There have been some shoots of optimism for a number of the companies we spoke to this week in terms of sales, with either larger projects being signed off or really good tenders coming through, which shows that there is movement going on. This isn't for all companies, and I think we still are on that really the knife edge where we don't know whether we're going to see a quicker rebound or if we're going to go into a deeper recession, and this is something which is going to be absolutely critical to keep an eye on. The issue of cash flow is certainly one of the biggest concerns, or the biggest concern for the companies we've spoken to, with the 3-month mark after the lockdown starting, which will be the end of June, being the flashpoint which is really going to start testing the resilience of businesses. This is backed up by research by the British Chamber of Commerce, which says that most companies that they've spoken to, small and medium-sized businesses, have around 3 months of cash reserves, which would be that April, May and June period. A number of the companies we've spoken to have applied for loans, no one received it back yet, and others are going to be putting in for small and medium-sized business loans from the government. One business we spoke to have received £10,000 as a small business grant, and they reported that it's very quick and simple to receive for those businesses who do qualify. Business sentiment was one of the key reasons we started this survey, and there has been a slight shift this week in how people's outlook. For the 3-month mark, although it's still negative, it is less negative now than it has been in the previous 2 weeks, and the key reason for this are those sales, those tenders, those won jobs that a number of companies have reported. The 6-month mark was negative and has become slightly more negative this week in terms of people's outlook. One of the key reasons for this, I believe, is the cash flow, and really, the 6-month mark, if sales have not picked up, this is when businesses are going to be really considering their future. The 12-month mark, if we make it through, is looking really optimistic in fact, and 82% of businesses, up from around 70 last week, now report that they feel either slightly or very optimistic about where they're going to be. That's not necessarily to say the financials are going to look better than they would hope this year, but they do believe that their business will be in a stronger place in terms of perhaps the systems or the product than it had been otherwise, and they're going to be set up for stronger growth moving forward. The certainty in outlook for businesses also saw a slight divergence this week. Whereas last week and the week before, most people said, it's going to be hard to predict sales. Now, some people have said it's going to be easier, and some people have shifted to say, actually, it's got even more difficult. And I think this is perhaps the difference between those companies who have reached, some sales opportunities and those that haven't seen those opportunities arrive yet. The number of companies furloughing staff has increased this week, and now 90% of companies we surveyed have furloughed at least a proportion of their employees. The number of people made redundant has not increased at all and is still at an incredibly low level, which shows the scheme is working. Just a small matter of getting the payments in now at the end of April, and it's going to be interesting to report back on that in the coming weeks. It almost goes without saying now that video conferencing and remote working could be an upside of this pandemic for those roles and businesses who are able to adopt it. Of the companies we've spoken to, the majority say that they hope to continue 1 to 2 days a week where they haven't previously done it after the pandemic. It creates better balance of life for employees and owners. It reduces the cost, the time and the environmental impact of travel, and it's going to give opportunities to centralise whole functions. I always like to finish with points of optimism. So speaking to the business leaders this week, there are 5 key things I'd like to pick up on. Firstly is that ongoing theme that this is the perfect time to strategise, to look internally at your business, make improvements and come out stronger. Some companies hope that when sales do return, they're going to return stronger with the pent-up spending power that some businesses and individuals are going to have. Others hope that there's going to be a boost for UK manufacturing. So as businesses look to potentially bring their supply chain back on shore for greater resilience, this will create opportunities for British manufacturers. Home working and video conferencing is a strong opportunity and optimism for a number of businesses. And finally, there's that chance, that feeling that actually getting to reframe our priorities on a world, business, personal, societal level is an opportunity and something really to grasp hold of. As I've said before, we need to be taking a long-term view on this and seeing it as a marathon and not a sprint. Yes, there have been some promising signs for a number of businesses about sales, but there are going to be really tough times ahead in the coming 3 to 6 months. I think by looking longer and saying where do we want to be in 12 months, where do we want to be in 2 or 3 years, and really setting ourselves up for that and focusing on those slightly longer objectives, we can ensure that we spend our time well, we feel more optimistic, and we encourage our staff to contribute positively to the business. If you'd like to see any of the anonymised, aggregated data, please look below the video. I really look forward to reporting back next week on the developments that have occurred in the group of really strong SMEs, small medium-sized businesses with which we work. Thank you for listening.